Hi, Ian Wilson here, Managing Partner of Occulus International. Thank you very much for joining us today. With me, I have the awesome, amazing, brilliant Yemi Penn. And, well, maybe I'm building you up too much. But wait till you actually hear of all the things that Yemi is. I'll let her expand on this. But from what I know, she is a single mum of two amazing kids. She is an entrepreneur, business owner, multiple businesses in multiple countries. She is a speaker. She's an author. I'm just like, the list goes on. So I'm kind of in awe of this lady. She's also my friend, which I am exceptionally thankful for. So Yemi, if I pass over to you, maybe give the audience some, just a little bit more meat on the bones of your background and your story, if you will.
Okay, I've been practicing this for quite a while. The best way I describe myself, so my name is Yemi Penn. I describe myself as an engineer by profession, an entrepreneur by passion, and then a mindset transformation coach by mission. The truth of the matter is, those are just words. They are literally just labels, and I do that on purpose because I want to trigger the fact that we can be anything we want to be. So, I do whatever sets my soul on fire, and I kind of gifted myself that option about 4 years ago when I found myself complaining on what society wasn't doing for me. So I needed to stop the blaming, and now I'm Jill of all trades, master of all.
And have you stopped that blaming? Let's go down, unpack that a little bit, because your mindfulness coaching element of who you are, and is a big part of you. Yeah. So have you stopped that blaming? I mean, how do you stop that blaming? How do you stop being at the effect of the external world to you and all of that minefield?
I never know how I'm going to answer questions until it just comes out. So you're going to need to bear with me. I love my mum dearly. However, she was the one that said, Yemi, you can't be a jack of all trades, a master of none. I remember that statement so well. And I can't figure out whether I signed a contract in a different lifetime that said, if you tell me I cannot do A, I'm going to do A+++. Yeah. So the minute she said that, I think something subconsciously was, well, how can I do a number of different things I enjoy and actually still be good at all of them? And so I'm not fully there at not chastising myself for doing so many things. So there are some things that I don't do right. Sometimes I haven't got my employment figures right within my consultancy. Sometimes I've got the wrong person in a job. But I now realize that's how I respond to that matters. Yeah. So I'm not fully there yet. I still think I probably do too much. But says who?
Yeah, well, exactly. What is too much? Yeah. Too much today is not too much tomorrow.
Agreed. And I think as long as I know when to rest, and I know usually when I'm about to hit the slopes, for want of a better word, and then I just call it, I slow down. But at the moment, I'm loving every part of it.
And you've just you've got two businesses, now a third business that you're starting, your hospitality business, cafe. That's like freaking full on. What's the thought process to go, oh, I've got two businesses, I'll just start a third? I mean, like, how'd you get to that point? I'm crazy and I just kept crazier. So,
yesterday I met up with 3 amazing women in STEM, so engineers, and I was trying to pick their brain on how we can start to change the industry, not just a male-female discussion, but more an emotional intelligence conversation. And it was the first time I was able to pick out why I seem to do as much as I do, or decide that I want to do another business. And if I'm going to be honest, probably the first time I've ever said it publicly is because I think deep down I'm angry.
Really?
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think deep down I'm angry, and I made the choice to use my anger in progress or to be destructive and just whinge and moan. And I think I'm angry because I'm struggling with what society has said is the only way to live, especially as a single mum. Yeah. I think I was, and I didn't want to be angry at anybody, but just either the structural systems or even maybe just my mind. But my anger is not the anger that hurts anybody. I like to fuel my anger into outputs, into outlets.
So how do we forgive ourselves? Because I think a lot of people, they're not necessarily, some people are angry at the world, some people are angry at someone or at themselves, which is ultimately who everyone's angry at. Absolutely. If they've got it. If they're honest. Yeah. So how do you forgive yourself? Do you have a process for that?
It's a good question. How do I forgive myself? Honestly, I look at everybody. I look at the people before me. Like, most people are trying to reinvent the wheel. Absolutely, there's new things that can be discovered, new ways of thinking. But you just got to go back in history and see what people did before us. I mean, as an engineer, I look at buildings and I honestly cannot believe that men or women actually physically built that there was technology. People have done things greater than the things I'm doing today. And so that gives me comfort. And I'm pretty confident they would have made a number of mistakes. Absolutely. So I kind of seek comfort in knowing that I'm not alone. And for that reason, I just say, okay, next. On the premise no one's getting hurt, I'm going to keep on making mistakes.
Yeah. So kind of message in that is be comfortable making mistakes, learn from them, obviously, move on. Yeah,
absolutely. I think learning from them is the key thing, because doing the same thing over and over again and trying to get a different result is definition of madness.
Well, it can be really frustrating if nothing else. And pretty bloody insane, yeah. And how do you this mindset you have, because it's not, some would say it's not actually that common. Everyone doesn't have a mindset like you have. How do you then teach that in your kids? I'm just throwing bombs on you at the moment.
So about 4, maybe 8 weeks ago, I was pretty confident I was failing on that. And I've now managed to be kind to myself again. I'm trying to teach my kids by just being it, but I found out I wasn't being it openly enough. So at the moment they see me go to work, but I don't talk about it. Like, I'm not giving the learnings behind it. So the same level of investment I give, say, a client I'm coaching or on a project, I found I wasn't giving that same quality to my kids on business, on relationships. Yeah. So now I tell them the stuff that I was never taught when growing up that you did, because it was not children's business, it was adults' business. My skill now has to be to change the language so they get it. Yeah. So if my son says, why are you always on your laptop? Even though he's absolutely right in some instance, and I say, well, sometimes I try to have a break, but because I want to have choices in what I do and I enjoy what I do, this is why I'm doing it. This is a conversation I would have never had, because I would have thought he didn't have the wherewith to understand that. Similar with my daughter, I now explain it to her when she's asking for money. It's never just a no, it's a conversation. Absolutely, you can get those trainers. I'm going to need you to add a bit more value in the home by either doing this, this or this. And I try to do a really clear monotone so that it's not a sense of punishment. I'm just really careful on how I say the things to them. So I'm hoping they're learning, and if they don't know now, they will definitely know in a couple of years when they leave the house.
Yes, well, exactly. And to give context to the audience, how old are your kids?
So my daughter's 13 years old and my son is 6 years old. And sometimes my partner, Steve, who obviously is looking at me while I'm giving them life lessons, and he's like, don't you think that was a bit harsh? But I'm okay with that.
So there's a time and a place for everything with children, I guess. And look, I have a very similar viewpoint to you, because I try and give the lessons, and I can almost see it going in one ear and out the other, but hopefully some sticks.
I think it does. I mean, my daughter now has a debit card and it failed. It got declined because I'd given her an allowance of what she could spend. And I guess she figured some fairy godmothers, and sometimes it happens. Sometimes there's just a bit more money in the bank. And I remember the trauma that gave me when I was younger. I was always nervous of it being declined. So I was conscious of not to give her that insecurity, but to say, you just need to be aware of what's in, make sure you do the calculations on what your allowance is, and then the rest was Godspeed. And that was that was the rest of her lesson.
Wow. So I know young teenagers, like, well, I've got a 13-year-old as well, so in the same situation with a debit card, just like, it's a minefield.
It is, because they need to figure out their own experiences. I don't want to offload my perceptions as it needing to be theirs. So for me, it's a battle of trying to learn trying to teach them what I know, but then also trying to have them learn how they work and how they respond to, life lessons.
Oh yeah, because each human's totally different, and we're trying to see it in our kids, what kind of human they're going to be, what kind of person they're kind of growing into. Yeah. Well, we can go down rabbit holes with kids for like hours. Yeah. One thing that I think is like really, really super exciting with you at the moment is being accepted on TEDx in America. In America. Not just Australia, America of all places. And so I wanted to kind of get into this a little bit. Like, do you know what you're talking about? I mean, you do? Okay.
Do? Oh my gosh, you're going to be the first one. I kind of tell.
We're going to get it before TEDx. So what could be the top line? Tell me.
It's actually about trauma. And I haven't decided exactly how the title is, because that is going to be the thing that gets people either saying, no, she didn't, but still leaning in to listen, because I really want people to lean in. Mm-hmm. And to give some sort of context around it, I think a lot of us are walking around the earth with unresolved trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess I'm trying to give a gentle, lovingly nudge for everyone to take the responsibility of their own trauma, to at least acknowledge it. And I'm going to be real and it's part of a documentary I'm doing as well. I'm going to be real in acknowledging that I understand why we would have buried it for so long, because I did, and it's a safety mechanism. You're trying to stay alive, but then I'm also trying to unearth what is missing as a result of it being buried, because almost everything I've done in the past 5 years, whether people want to see it as being successful or happy, is because I started to look at my trauma and start to resolve it. Yeah. And I'm wondering, maybe there's something in this. So my idea is around that, and so I'm in the process of forming it. But I'm excited. I'm nervous-sighted, which is nervous and excited joined together.
Yes.
But I am excited.
And I'm sure those two feelings will change as the closer you get to it. Because when is it? November?
November.
Holy
yeah,
moly.
I know. Florida. And so I'm hoping I can get on that plane. And even if I can't, I will definitely be sharing the big idea.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be doing it online if you can't do it face to face. And are you going to do Sydney TEDx?
No, well, that's how it started. I applied for Sydney TEDx, and I was so close, but I didn't get through. So hopefully this is the first of many. It's really bizarre, because I really was not meant to be the woman on the stage. Like, it's the opposite. Like, I can't even fathom.
Oh, I need to interrupt on that, because so for the audience, maybe the younger audience, so you and I were not absolutely spring chickens anymore.
Talk for yourself.
We're probably at that halfway point in life. But for people in the kind of the first quarter, first or going into the second quarter, how did you? I'm just trying to kind of pose the question. How did you make this shift in your brain where you decided you were going to be this person, because you didn't necessarily have the teachings or direct learnings from parents, and we can tell with your accent that you're not necessarily Australian, but you're UK, and then Africa as well, and so you've got all of this cultural melting pot. But do you remember when you made that choice? You just ages ago, you went, I'm on this journey.
Your questions are so juicy, FYI. I'm already getting really excited. Really excited.
I would probably, if someone was asking me these questions, I'd be like, oh,
I love it mainly because I don't know until I say it, but it's in my head. And that's why I love conversations, especially intimate conversations, because you actually learn more about yourself. Yeah. I guess the decision point for me was when I became a single parent to 2 kids with 2 different dads.
How old were you then?
So I was my early 30s, but however, I had my daughter when I was 24.
Right.
And I was already going against the grain, because we all know it. You get married, have the kids, live happily ever after,
that's
and retire. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'd signed up for that. And then when it turned out, even trying really hard, even though I was trying to cook 5 days a week and the food didn't taste as good as it was meant to, it still didn't work out. And, now I'm older. I think then I would have blamed, my partner, but it's definitely both of us. And it's partly why I'm doing this TEDx and this documentary, is because there's so much stuff stuck in us that we haven't resolved. Yeah. But becoming a single parent at 25 was tough. And then I figured, okay, I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna just get married and it's gonna be fine. This is your second attempt at following the memo, Yemi. You're good. You're good. And so I got married and became a military dependent because I figured that's what I needed to do. I needed to depend on my husband in order to add the value to the world.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I know you're looking thinking concepts.
You really that? Okay, I don't kind of see that, but
You could have seen my hustle. So I was in Japan, Okinawa, Japan, doing hair. I'm not domesticated at all, but I was hustling to make the money. And, you know, my now ex-husband, even though we have a really great relationship now, back then it just felt like it wasn't working. Yeah. It wasn't working. I think it wasn't working because I was trying to fit myself, which was this star shape, into this square kind of gap. And once again, I wouldn't have the vocabulary, I wouldn't have had the intuition back then, but now I can see that. And I think when I relocated to Australia just over 6 years ago was when I realized, there's something not right here. Are we allowed to swear on this today?
oh, it's only going to go on YouTube, I guess so. But
Okay. And the only reason was okay. And I will only say it once, but I love this saying. So I can't remember. I think it's the film with Matthew McConaughey. I think it's called Gentleman. Brilliant movie. There is a saying that applied to me 6 years ago, which is there is fuckery afoot, meaning something was not right. Yeah. Here I am, single mum, 2 kids, 2 different dads. Like there's something, I'm either broken, bruised, or I'm just not listening, or auntie so and so was right. And even though I was on a 6-figure salary, you know, that was the standard of the world, that you're on 6-figure salary, you should be fine. But I still couldn't pay for the trip to the UK, me and the 2 kids. Yeah. I had to get another job, which not many people know. So even though I was still working in the transport field, I got another second hustle job. It didn't make sense. I'm in my early 30s and I'm not happy with this. And there are 2 choices. I know it sounds easy. You either sink or swim. And I can't recall what it was. I think I would have been living somewhere in Bexley North. And I was looking at everybody that owned a house on the street. And I just thought, am I ever going to own a house? Am I actually ever? And that was when I realized, okay, something has got to change. And then that thirst for wanting to change, I think subconsciously would have attracted so many things, because I truly believe that the minute the student is ready, the teacher comes. And I think that's what happened for me. So I think most people wait for a crisis before they awake and change. I'm wondering if there's a way to not go into crisis mode before we change. But that was my turning point. So yeah, probably about 4.5 years ago.
And so what was the first thing you did?
First thing I did.
It's kind of like because sometimes it's that first step. It's that if someone's in crisis or someone doesn't feel good about themselves or where they're at in their lives, I think sometimes it's that first step, which is almost the hardest. Because once you start the first step, you go to the first PT session or you go to do the whatever it is, then you'll go to the second. You go, it wasn't that bad. Because the pessimist can be an optimist.
That's true. And I think you're right. I think it's that first step. I think that's what I've realized now, that even though I can't see the bottom of the stairs, which is the scariest thing ever, is to just take that first step going down. I'm a big believer of modeling people that have been here before and making whatever they've done better. That for me is working smart. I don't mind working hard, but I will choose smart before I choose hard.
Absolutely.
And so I just remember, I think it was just investing. No, that was it. People who had set up their own consultancies. So I knew I was good at what I did. Yeah. And so for me, it was a case of, well, how did he set up his consultancy management? How did he? And it was a conversation. I had to get out of my own way because I'm an introvert. And so speaking to people was always going to be difficult for me. But because I knew how much I wanted to be able to afford a flight to the UK for me and the 2 kids, I knew I needed to speak to that person. That actually was the first thing. And when I spoke to them, found out that they weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, found out that they pulled their finger out and that they did stuff. And I managed to get over this concept of, well, that's because he's a man, it can be easy. I just decided to put that to the side, whether it's true or not right now, none of my business. I need to focus on mine. That was when I realized, the possibilities are there. Yeah. So that was the first step. It was speaking to people and managing to convince my brain that it's possible.
One phrase you said there, I think it's quite interesting, is I had to get out of my own way. Yeah. Well, I don't think I said it exactly the same as you did, but basically that's the premise.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And it doesn't mean that there haven't been people that have influenced it, but God forbid, unless we're in a country where you are physically in shackles, or you are imprisoned, or you are being held against your will, you actually have so much more freedom than probably a bigger percentage than we think of the world. And so getting out of your own ways, figuring out, well, what is it you've managed to take on that tells you you cannot do A, B, C, D? Yeah. And the minute you dismantle that, you actually get out of your own way, but you have to be the person that does it. I know right now to me it seems like common sense, but 7 years ago it wouldn't have been, because I was so sure somebody else had to do it. And that's the bit I don't get. What have I watched on TV? What show have I been following that made me think somebody else was going to save me?
Yeah.
But I think some of us to a certain level expect that.
Is that conditioning though? Is that societal conditioning, parental conditioning?
Look, it must be. And currently what we're going through in the world, it kind of is. I'm frustrated. I'm going to do my TEDx. I'm frustrated as hell that I have to ask for permission to leave. For someone who values freedom, so I can be very forgiving of a group of people that think that they have to wait for somebody else to approve what they do, because for some reason, and I got to be careful here, for some reason we have governments all over the world, not just here, who have managed to create this system that says, if you trust us, we will do this, and therefore you must respond to this law, to this rule. So I can understand why people think they don't have control. And I guess part of my work is saying, well, actually, we do.
Well, you do. I think you just need to take the consequence of that, because you can jump on a plane, you can fill in the forms and get the permission and jump on a plane in November, no matter what the rules are, 2 weeks before your event, and then be in quarantine for 2 weeks, and then do the event, and then fly back, and then 2 weeks in quarantine. So actually, freedom is just harder.
Yeah. It is, but you're right. We still have the freedom, a little bit constrained, but can we deal with the consequences?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting one. We're trying not get too down that path. Let's not get down the covered path, because I think that's not going to be good for us. No. Or anyone watching. We've got very distinct views here. So no, but it is one interesting thing that the whole coronavirus situation and lockdowns and shutdowns and restrictions generally. It's quite an interesting highlight for a human being, because all of this is happening external to us as a being. Yeah. It's environmental, it's external to us. So it's almost like it's like a test for a human being. Yeah. Because if you can be positive and have an amazing mindset and be focused on developing yourself, expanding your, improving your emotional intelligence or whatever it is during these times, when it passes, which it will, what could you do after that? Wow.
Exactly. And I think this is the opportunity, and I think it's happening. I think there's a little mini awakening. I mean, there is sadness in it. And if people can see that sometimes things are happening for you and not to you, you can come out at the end of COVID and just be more of a legend than you were before.
I think it's actually quite exciting. It's like this opportunity, and we're like, and the reason we're almost, or I'll speak for myself, the reason I'm getting frustrated is because I can feel it, and it's like, come on, governments. The moment you kind of actually just let this thing go, it's just going to boom.
It is. And look, and I think it's not to ignore the fact that there are consequences, there are measures that need to be taken, and safety, and I want to acknowledge that. However, the minute you get comfortable with the consequences, let's go.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Jumping back onto your TEDx, that's a full-on subject, trauma, and how we carry our trauma, and I think we all have it.
I think we do. I mean, I haven't looked at the statistics in Australia, but America was saying, I think it was 70% of people will be traumatized at some point in their life, and I'm sure there are lots of studies going around, but we're so busy And maybe I'm just the advocate for this. Someone needs to be the advocate for climate change or vaccinations or whatever. And I think for me, this is it. Because working, especially in the engineering field, I see it more than ever. You're in a meeting and someone loses their shit. It's never actually really about what they think they lost their shit over. It's usually about something else.
Oh, it's always about something else. And then what about generational trauma? So this almost transference of trauma between generations.
Yeah.
That's a minefield
It
in
is.
itself.
You can talk about war, veterans, you can talk about, depression or whatever someone else has gone through. And I think someone has done work on it. There has been investigations.
For sure.
However, I think we now need it to come to a generation that is here and that is present and ready to listen to it, especially in light of what's going on.
Yeah. Do you think society is getting more aware, more conscious, higher EI? I mean, because consciousness and EI to me are kind of interlinked. I know the scientific world call it EQ, EI, whatever they call it. In our sort of world, we call it consciousness or awareness. Are they one of the same? Are they?
I think they are. I think the world is, but I think Corona came in and kind of moved things a bit. And so I'm really hopeful that it's still going to elevate consciousness or emotional intelligence. And I think it has to, because so many people are affected outside of the virus itself. It's highlighting loneliness. It's highlighting, our older generation that we need to care for. It's highlighting this request to ask people from different generations to get really comfortable with working remotely without connectivity. Yeah. So I have hope that something, the work you're doing, the work I'm doing, even in our day jobs, regardless of our profession, is saying, hold up, something's not right here. We're more disconnected than ever, and it's hurting us and our loved ones. What do we need to do? And maybe then people will have the conversation about EI. Maybe they would have the conversation about, mindfulness and personal development in the professional space. Mm-hmm. So I think it's coming, but it's more hope than anything.
Yeah, I think if we go into the professional space, obviously Occulus EI is a big thing that we push. Not only in our people, but just how we assess candidates and clients and stuff like that. But it is coming in the corporate sense, but it's taking a while. It really is, a little bit too long, Simon Sinek's been out there about really conscious leadership for a while now. Yeah. And
But is it that we need new leaders to do it, or are we expecting existing leaders to catch on? Because that's where the work should be then. We should be finding leaders who have been around for decades. And that's the debate I'm unsure of. Are we trying to get people to take on new ideas, or do we just work with generations that are ready to take new ideas?
Well, I think, yes, definitely work with generations that are ready, but also work with the generations. It's like having a graduate program and having an element of it which is purely about developing EI and their consciousness and their awareness of self, my own emotion, other people's emotion, in groups, individually, in stressful situations, and actually put them in situations like that. Yeah. And then, almost video them. And obviously I don't know every single graduate program in corporate Australia, but how much are we actually developing that awareness in graduates as we bring them into organizations and say, emotionally intelligent leaders, categorically, all the stats are out there that they're better leaders. Loyalty and staff and profitability and less staff turnover and all this sort of stuff. There's plenty of stats out there around it, but we're not developing it from the youngsters.
Oh, you've already given me another idea. It's like having this kind of academy or program for what we call the softer skills, but I'm actually calling the essential skills. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm building a bridge or a railway. If it's not going to serve the people, the humans, the beings who are meant to use it, which require these softer skills, then we've missed something. They're essential. But I think targeting graduate programs holistically, whether that's universities, remote, virtual, it should be on someone's radar as a priority.
Absolutely, and should be in the schools and part of the education, the curriculum. Yeah. But let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Podcast number 2.
Yeah, that's an hour on its own, isn't it? We were just supporting and sponsoring a webinar of a new app called Parental EQ. So, and actually a parent himself, a doctor that's helped basically develop this app. And it's questions, I'm in this situation, what do I do with my kids in order to do things that are emotionally intelligent in response to what children do or don't do, or listen to or don't listen to.
When is that app available?
It's available now. It's online, it's in the App Store. So we just sponsored that because emotional intelligence can be taught in children, and just kind of bringing the conversation back almost full circle for you talking about your kids. You're teaching them emotional intelligence, awareness.
I guess what would really help me actually, if you're going to have any influence over this app, is they come home, my kids come home to me, I do my bit, and then they go to school and might learn something completely different. And then they come back home. And so I just need help with that cycle, because sometimes it's contradiction. My son or my daughter might say stuff, or she might say something like, I'm just not good at maths, I just can't do STEM. But something's happened because she's now chosen it as an elective. And that's how I know that subconsciously she's hearing me, because I'm saying things like, the reason why I will always advocate, for instance, women in STEM is because one day when someone's designing a product for women, say for whatever personal reason that only women go through, I would like a woman to be part of that team.
Absolutely.
And so when I explained that to her, but I had to really break it down. But then if she goes to school and hears something different, she comes back to me and I've got to do the work again. And I'm just wondering, can the schools and parents find a way to have as a consistent message as possible in terms of emotional development? That's a desire of mine.
Wow, yeah, that's bigger than bloody Ben-Hur.
Okay, fair enough. I put it out there, hoping someone takes it.
Now we have to analyse all the emotional intelligence of the educational people in the education system, and what part of the education system, and at what stage. Yeah. It's like, Jesus.
When you break it down like that, I just think, not me.
Open Pandora's box on that one. Wow. Yeah, look, I think the more talks like this that go out there in the ether, the more people see that, the more people that can work on their own developments. It's not about doing an EI course and stuff like that. I've never done an EI course in my life, but I've done courses that create a massive amount of awareness of where I came from and how my character structure was built. Huge number of courses on that, and they're very confronting and really quite upsetting at times.
Because you have to dig deep. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but that is what builds your emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that. They just go, oh, I understand the emotion in you, so therefore I'm emotionally intelligent. Half the time, I don't even understand the emotion that's going on in me in that particular moment. I understand it after it's gone, it's passed me by.
And you're like, oh, that's what that was.
That's what that was. Yeah. I wasn't, I should have really been in witness to myself on that occasion.
I like that, in witness.
Well, and then you can watch yourself, even if you still do it and still respond in the way you're going to respond, at least you can be in witness.
Absolutely. And another word I use for that is to be the observer. So there's sometimes I see stuff going on in my mind and my body, and I'm like, okay. And I just literally try to leave my body and just watch what's going on. And then I have to get really honest with the fact that, okay, that was jealousy. That was me being scared. That was me being fearful. And it takes work.
Oh, the consciousness it takes is, it's just crazy. Like I was, I was, if anyone listening to this ever wants to get on that path of becoming more aware and unpacking things in ourselves and understanding ourselves a bit more, just getting a life coach. Absolutely. Is like, that's, both Yemi and I have life coaches, so it's this sort of thing. And in fact, business coaches and all that sort of stuff, but actually accepting, having a support mechanism around you of trusted people that love you to kind of go, let me just kind of maybe guide you down that path or guide you down this path. I think it's massively beneficial and never ending.
It is never. And I think that's what I realized every time I would have a session, either whether it's a therapist or a coach, I would say, but I should know that. And I've now picked up that I'm going to keep learning till my last breath. Maya Angelou said that. And when she said that, and I figured she was the fountain of all knowledge, I just thought, okay, I better sit tight because I've got a while before I leave this earth. And so I'm going to keep learning. And so that's why I have to be kind to myself, because if not, I'll be a raving mess by the time I'm in my 60s, because I've been beating myself up for every mistake I made, when in actual fact, I've just been learning.
Well, the joy is that it should be in the mistake. I turned a corner at the start of this year just around focus on happiness.
Yeah.
And even if maybe something could be perceived as negative, we'll still focus on the happiness in that.
Absolutely.
Focus on the discomfort, the happiness of the discomfort, the why of the discomfort. You're like, oh.
That's a tall order, but I hear you.
But you can try.
You can try, absolutely.
You know, you can wake up in the morning and whatever your ritual is, and then focus your mind on something that is going to generate the feeling of happiness, or generate the feeling of gratitude, or generate the feeling of whatever one you want that's going to serve you. Yeah. And is that hard? Is it hard to generate a thought, to visualize something? It's not hard, right?
For you and I, it's not.
But if you stop, because I say it to my kids, you know, I've got a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old, especially my 7-year-old daughter, she's like amazing, and she does it. I just go, just stop, visualize. Can you visualize something that happened yesterday that you felt really happy about?
I probably need to go deeper with my son. I think up until the age of 7, they soak up so much, and so if there was ever a time to really influence greatness, it's then. Oh,
and you know, I still, my 13-year-old son, he's a harder nut to crack, but we still get him. I still say to him, he goes, well, you're still choosing to feel that way. There may have been a trigger or a button, and that, you know, that may have been me that was that trigger or pressed that button. Yeah. But you still have a choice in how you're going to react to me, right? And that's a physical reaction and an emotional one. So maybe choose something different now that we've had the awareness of what that was. But you're right, it's harder when they're younger. When they're older. Yeah. It's easier when they're younger. Absolutely. Well, Yemi, I just wanted to kind of close it out and thank you so much for sharing and giving us a little bit of insight into you. You know, Yemi, the human being, the opening it up a little bit. So, and just giving us your time. Really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening to us today ramble on about whatever we wanted to particularly talk about. And hopefully there's been some value and you enjoyed it. You smiled a little bit through it, or it gave you some reflection. So thank you very much for joining us today.